I'm live. Hello. Welcome to the final part of Lud-in-the-Mist. If you're not familiar with it, why are you watching this video? Go back to the beginning, which unfortunately is not the beginning. My videos start in the middle of the book because I was doing it on the clock app, but I kind of got mad at them, so so I decided to move over to YouTube. But the audiobook itself will be out hopefully, February time period. I still have to set it up with the distributor. But yes, Blood in the Mist, for those of you that don't know, is a very famous fantasy novel written about 100 years ago by Hope Mirrlees. And, uh, if you're fans of Diana Wynne Jones or Susanna Clarke, you'll see a lot that they were clearly inspired by this book. As for myself, I'm Shiremi Osorio. I am a professional audiobook narrator. I've narrated for Locus nominees, possibly winners, I can't remember, Hugo nominees, World Fantasy winners, and this is my personal project. Oh, and I just realized I still have to open up a file and start it. So, yeah, guess I should have given you that spiel while I was speaking. Okay, so we are at chapter 31. We really are. There's only a few more pages to go. Um, but yeah, it's a really good story, and I highly encourage you to check it out, whether it's my audiobook or just reading the book. As for when I do actually have information of when the audiobook comes out, I will be putting it up on these videos. Chapter 31. The Initiate. You may perhaps have wondered why a man so full of human failings and set in so unheroic a mould as Master Nathaniel Chanticleer should have been cast for so great a role. Yet the highest spiritual destinies are not always reserved for the strongest men, nor for the most virtuous ones. But though he had been chosen as Duke Aubrey's deputy and initiated into the ancient mysteries, he had not ceased to be in many ways the same Master Nathaniel as of old, whimsical, childlike, and often unreasonable. Nor, I fear, did he cease to be the prey of melancholy. I doubt whether initiation ever brings happiness. It may be that the final secret revealed is a very bitter one, or it may be that the final secret had not yet been revealed to Master Nathaniel. And, strange to say, far from being set up by his new honours, he felt oddly ashamed of them. It was almost as if he was for the first time running the gauntlet of his friend's eyes after having been afflicted by some physical disfigurement. When things had returned again to their usual rut, Master Ambrose came to spend a quiet evening with Master Nathaniel. They sat for some time in silence, puffing at their pipes, and then Master Ambrose said, "Tell me what your theory is about Endymion Lear, Nat. He was a double-dyed villain, all right, I suppose." Master Nathaniel did not answer at once, and then he said thoughtfully, "I suppose so." "I suppose so. I read the report of his defense, however, and his words seemed to me to ring true, but I think there was some evil lurking in his soul, and everything he touched was contaminated by it, even fairy fruit, even Duke Aubrey. And that spiritual sin he accused himself of, what do you suppose it was?" "I think," said Master Nathaniel slowly, "he may have mishandled the sacred objects of the mysteries." "What are these sacred objects, Nat?" Master Nathaniel moved uneasily in his chair and said, with an embarrassed little laugh, "Life and death, I suppose." He hated being asked about these sorts of things. Master Ambrose sat for a few moments, pondering, and then he said, "It was curious how in all his attacks on you he defeated his own ends." Yes, cried Master Nathaniel with much more animation than he had hitherto shown. That was really very curious. Everything he did produced exactly the opposite effect he had intended it should. He feared the Chanticleers and wanted to be rid of them, so he gets Ranulph off to Fairyland, whence nobody had ever before returned. And he manages to get me so discredited that I have to leave Lud, and he thinks me safely out of the way. But in reality, he was only bringing about his own downfall. I have to leave Lud, and so I go to the farm, and there I find old Gibberty's incriminating document, while the fact of Ranulph's having gone off yonder sends me after him, and that is why I suppose I come back as Duke Aubrey's deputy. And again he gave an embarrassed laugh. Let's add that laugh in. Oh, hang on a sec. I lost my spot. And that is why I suppose I come back as Duke Aubrey's deputy. And again he gave an embarrassed laugh, and then added dreamily, "It is useless to try and circumvent the Duke. He who rides the wind needs must go where his steed carries him," quoted Master Ambrose. Master Nathaniel smiled, and for some minutes they puffed at their pipes in silence. Then Master Nathaniel gave a reminiscent chuckle. "Those were queer months that we lived through, Ambrose," he cried. "All of us. That's to say, those of us who had parts to play seemed to be living each other's dreams or dreaming each other's lives, whichever way you choose to put it. And the most incongruous things began to rhyme. Apples and bleeding corpses and trees and ghosts. Yes, all our dreams got entangled. Leah makes a speech about men and trees, and I find the solution of the situation under a herm, which is half a man and half a tree. And you see the juice of fairy fruit and think that it is the dead of and you see the juice of fairy fruit and think that it is the dead bleeding, and so on. Yes, my adventures went on getting more and more like a dream still. Yes, my adventures went on getting more and more like a dream till the climax. And he bore. And he paused abruptly. A long silence followed, broken at last by Master Ambrose. "Well, Nat," he said, "I think I've had a lesson in humility. I used to have as good an opinion of myself as most men, I think, but now I've learned that I'm a very ordinary sort of fellow, made of very inferior clay to you and my moon love. All the things that you know at first hand, and I can only take on faith. Suppose, Ambrose, that what we know at first hand is only this, that there is nothing to know," said Master Nathaniel, a little sadly. Then he sank into a brown study, and Master Ambrose, thinking he wanted to be alone, stole quietly from the room. Master Nathaniel sat gazing moodily into the fire, and his pipe went out without his noticing it. Then the door opened softly, and someone stole in and stood behind his chair. It was Dame Marigold. All she said was, "Funny old Nat," but her voice had a husky tenderness. And then she knelt down beside him and took him into her soft, warm arms. And a new hope was borne in upon Master Nathaniel that some day he would hear the note again, and all would be clear. And all would be clear. Okay, that is the end of oopsie. That is the end of chapter 31. We have just one more chapter to do, and it is really more of an epilogue. Just kind of a quick catch up on what happened to these characters. It's a really interesting story, and the whole idea of the fairy fruit, which I've heard equates to art, music, that kind of thing. It's not fruit, but, the magic of humanity. Um, I don't know, it's really interesting how it goes from being this dreaded thing to suddenly Nat is now Duke Aubrey's, I'm gonna use the word emissary, I know that's not the word he used, deputy. Okay, enough blabbing from me. Chapter 31. Conclusion. I should like to conclude with a few words as to the fate of the various people who have appeared in these pages. Hazel Gibberty married Sebastian Thug. Sorry. Hazel Gibberty married Sebastian Thug, and an excellent husband he made her. He gave up the sea and settled on his wife's farm. Mistress Ivy Peppercorn came and lived with them, and every summer they had a visit from Master Nathaniel and ran off. Bawdy Bess left Lud at the time of Sebastian's marriage, out of pique, said the malicious Luke Hempen. I do not know why I'm suddenly like. Out of pique, said the malicious. Luke Hempen entered the Lud Yeomanry, where he did so well that when Mumchance retired, he was elected captain in his place. Hempy lived to a ripe old age, long enough to tell her stories to Ranulph's children, nor had she any scruples about telling them her views on neighbourliness. And when she died, as a tribute to her long and loving service, she was buried in the family chapel of the Chanticleers. Really apologize. I do not know why I've got a frog in my throat. Try that again. Mother Tibbs, after taking a conspicuous part in the wild revels which followed on the arrival of the fairy army, vanished forever from Dorimare. Nor did anyone ever again see Portunus. But, from time to time, a wild, red-haired youth would arrive uninvited, and having turned everything topsy-turvy with his pranks, would rush from the house shouting, "Ho, ho, ho!" I think I made that "ho, ho, ho" kind of a little, Hogfather, if you've ever seen that or read that. But I'm thinking specifically of the movie because it's like, "Ho, ho, ho." Anyway. By degrees, the crabapple blossoms recovered their spirits, but they certainly did not grow up into the sort of young ladies their mothers had imagined they would when they first sent them to Miss Primrose when they first sent them to Miss Primrose Crabapple's academy. They were never stinted of fairy fruit, for the dapple continued to bring its tribute to Dorimare, adding thereby considerably to the wealth of the country. For, thanks to the sound, practical sense of Master Ambrose, a new industry was started, that of candying fairy fruit and exporting it to all the countries with which they trafficked, in pretty fancy boxes, the painted lids of which showed that art was creeping back to Dorimare. As for Ranulph, when he grew up, he wrote the loveliest songs that had been heard since the days of Duke Aubrey, songs that crossed the sea and were sung by lonely fishermen in the far north, and by indigo mothers crooning. Okay, I'm not going to do that. and by mothers crooning to their babies by the doors of their huts in the cinnamon aisles. Dame Marigold continued to smile and to nibble marzipan with her cronies, but she used sometimes sadly to wonder. Whether Master Nathaniel had ever really come back from beyond the debatable hills. Sometimes, but not always. And Master Nathaniel himself? Whether he ever heard the note again, I cannot say. But in time he went, either to reap the fields of gillyflowers, or to moulder in the fields of gramarye. And because his coffin in the family and below his coffin in the family chapel, a brass tablet was put up with this epitaph: Nathaniel Chanticleer, President of the Guild of Merchants, three times Mayor of Lud-in-the-Mist, to whom was granted no small share of the peace and prosperity he helped to bestow on his town. Yeah. Three times Mayor of Lud-in-the-Mist, to whom was granted no small share of the peace and prosperity he helped to bestow on his town and country. An epitaph not unlike those he used to con so wistfully in his visits to the field of gramarye. An epitaph not unlike those he used to con so wistfully in his visits to the fields of gramarye. And this is but another proof that the written word is a fairy, as mocking and elusive as Willy-Wisp, speaking lying words to us in a feigned voice. So let all readers of books take warning. And with this final exhortation, this book shall close. Columbine. And can the physician make sick men well? And can the magician a fortune divine without lily, germander, and sops in wine, with sweet briar and bonfire? Oopsie. That one was not my fault. With sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wine. This thing is really just jumping. And Columbine. Oh, okay, that just didn't go. With sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wire and Columbine. Within and out, in and out, round as a ball, with hither and thither as straight as a line, with lily, germander, and sops in wine, with sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wire and Columbine. Any lass for a duke who wears green in lands where the sun and the moon do not shine, with lily, germander, and sops in wine, with sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wire and Columbine. Sorry, this thing is just going crazy. When Aubrey did live, there lived no poor. The lord and the beggar on roots did dine, with lily, germander, and sops in wine, with sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wire and Columbine. There are windfalls of dreams, there's a wolf in the stars, and life is a nymph who will never be thine, with lily, germander, and sops in wine, with sweet briar and bonfire and strawberry wire and Columbine. Okay, so that is Lud-in-the-Mist. I apologize. That last chapter should not have taken as long. I just frog in my throat, and downhill from there. As I said, the audiobook will be probably out around February timeframe. I need to get that set up. Once I do know, I'll definitely put up a video about it. And I will put links in these videos so that anybody who happens across this can find it. Thank you so much for joining me.